Welcome to episode 20 of the Rock is George podcast. I'm your host, George Dion. The Rock is George podcast is rock music, whiskey, pop culture, nostalgia, and it's ever evolving. The Rock is George podcast is now streaming on all major podcasting apps and services, and we now can be found on YouTube for those of you that consume your media that way. For episode 20, I have an interview with a heavy metal guitarist. His name is Herman Frank. Herman started his career in the band Accept. You may know their song Balls to the Wall. It was pretty popular in the early 80s. Shortly after the release of that album, Herman moved on. He played briefly in the band Hazard and the band Sinner, two German heavy metal bands as well. 1986, Herman joined the band Victory for their Don't Get Mad, Get Even album back in 1986. And through most of the 80s, Victory was fronted by former Ted Nugent vocalist Charlie Huhn. Charlie Huhn is currently the singer of Foghat and sang for Humble Pie as well. And another German heavy metal artist, Axel Rudi Pell. So Herman had some success with Victory through the late 80s and early 90s. Victory is placed up there in high regard with other German heavy metal bands like the Scorpions or Helloween. The band broke up in the late 90s, around 1992, after You Bought It, You Name It album. From there, Herman Frank bounced around from a few bands. Victory had a couple of reunions and disunions and reunions and disunions. Herman went back to Accept in 2010 for Blood of Nations, and he appeared on 3 albums in the modern era for Accept. Herman started his solo career in 2009 with his debut album Loyal to None. He still releases solo albums every few years. His last solo album, Two for a Lie, came out earlier this year. And the reason I'm talking to Herman Frank today is there's another Victory album. There's been a few lineup changes, but Herman says everything's firing on all cylinders. The latest Victory album is called Gods of Tomorrow, and here's Herman Frank to tell you all about it. If I knew absolutely nothing about Victory, how would you describe the band's music to me?
I guess it's classical hard rock style. I mean, not the modern things. It sounds modern. The record sounds modern in good sound, modern sound. But the songs, I mean, I would classify them as classical metal, not metal, classic rock.
Is that how it differs from like your solo material? Victory's a little more classic rock. You're a little more metal.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you mentioned it. Herman Frank is more metal, definitely.
Your new album with Victory comes out on November 26th on AFM Records. It's called Gods of Tomorrow. The last Victory album was released 10 years ago. You said that was going to be the last Victory album. So what brought Victory back for another run?
I guess we watched the James Bond movie, Never Say Never. Nah, actually, the story is the singer before Yachty, he lost his voice, and he went to the doctor, and the doctor says if you're going on for singing, you might even not be able to speak anymore. So that was a really stopped then. But people, when I was out with Accept and all over the world, everybody asked me, oh, when is a new Victory coming? Or a couple of fans ask it all the time. And all of a sudden, 2.5 years ago, I did a show with Herman Frank, a festival, and there was a band playing. And when I entered the venue, and I was listening and said, my goodness, what a voice. And I saw this band it was called The Order. And that was Johnny's original band. And I saw this guy singing and said to myself, that's the kind of voice I was looking for 8 years now. And I started talking to him after the show and sent him a couple of days later a couple of playbacks from the older songs from Victory, from the classical we've done. And then he sent me back 2 or 3 days later with his voice on top. And I said to myself, that's perfectly. He's combining Charlie Yoon, Fernando Garcia, and every singer in Victory in one person. He's good looking. He's in his best age, and so that's why that's how we came together. And then, first of all, we had planned to do a couple of anniversary shows for 30 years. Culture Kills the Native and Tempest, of course, the most successful albums. But then Corona showed up, so we only could do one show. And then the next week came Corona showed up, so Sweden Rock was cancelled, Bang Ahead was cancelled, a couple of festivals in Europe had been cancelled, a tour had been cancelled. And then I said to myself, with this kind of singer, it might be worth to go for a new record, to write a couple of new songs. So I sat down in my studio, and after the second, third song, for me it felt like coming home, like somebody was setting my second heart free again to write kind of like rock music. Because in the last decade, I really was I got pointed to metal. I did my solo stuff. I was working with Accept, so it was kind of like more metal music. And as you said, Victor is more classic rock. So for me, it was after the second song, third song, I felt coming home. It was quite easy to remember all the old style I started with.
Absolutely. Let's talk about a couple of the singles that you've released so far. Gods of Tomorrow is one of the singles you have out. Do you want to talk about what that's about?
Actually, Gods of Tomorrow is maybe it's the fastest song on the album. I really do like the power, the freshness in this song, the way it's recorded, and I do like the guitarist and the chorus and the vocals for sure. I guess for lyric wise, I mean, we can't do every song about sex, love, sex, and drugs and rock and roll. So we thought to ourselves, oh, Johnny is the most known poet of the universe, so he has to come up with some serious meanings, lyric that means something. We said to ourselves, hey, if you go for 20 or 30 years in the same style we are living right now, and wasting all the energy and all the stuff we have on Earth, we might need that somebody calls us out from the universe, or somebody would call it different gods. But there's no one who would give us an advice how we can survive or we should change our life. So all in all, we had to be the gods of tomorrow by ourselves. Everybody has to handle his, what is it, phase, schicksal? Don't know the word for it. Everybody has to handle his things by himself, and we better should start right now.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Cut to the Bone is another single that's been released off the album, if you want to talk about that song.
It's quite nice guitar riff. And I came up with this riff maybe 3 years ago, and it sounds a little bit like played with a bottleneck, but it isn't. And so I'm kind of like proud of this kind of like riff. It's a typical song, sitting in a car, sunny outside, going on the highway and listening to this song. The lyrics are, if somebody was getting really bad about you or did something wrong about you, you should pay him back.
That's a good thing. An eye for an eye, right?
Eye for an eye. And once in a while, there are a couple of things happening. You think about this phrase.
So is it difficult coming up with the songs you want to put out there in advance of the album, or is that something that the record company decides on?
You have to talk to the record company anyway. I mean, it's kind of like difficult because you never know if you record 13 songs. You never know which song might people like the most. So you're always judging, and as a musician, it's very tough to judge which of these 13 songs you want to put out first. So you're talking back and forward. In the end, I decide by myself, okay, we're gonna do this. Otherwise, you release 13 songs at the same time. So for me, I said to myself, cut to the bone. It's a typical rocker. It's the Victory style. And for Gods of Tomorrow, the second lyric video, I said that this song is so way of freshness and so exciting when you listen to it. I said that this song deserves to be the second single. And right since a week, I guess there's the real video out with Love and Hate.
When you write your music, because you're a guitar player, when you write your music, do you come up with the riffs first and then kind of set the music to it?
Yeah. Normally, I'm looking for. I mean, the music I'm writing or I'm playing or I'm doing. I think it's based on a guitar riff. I don't like these kind of like songs they do just three chords and just we say in Germany Scherge. They just put three chords, no special rhythm to it, and a keyboard melody on top. That's kind of like boring. I'm not composing in this kind of style. For me, it's a guitar riff, so the song is recognizable, and then so I work around this guitar riff.
Victory's currently out on tour. Am I correct?
Yeah, actually, we played on the last weekend. The last three shows, they hadn't been cancelled. One was in Germany, one was in France, and one was in Belgium. Anything else was cancelled this year. But it was great fun to be on stage again. The band was quite powerful, and everybody was so excited. So it had been great shows. And tour, we've just planned 16, 18 days just for sure. So it's not been cancelled again. So we only go for 16 to 18 days in end of January.
Was it weird getting back up on stage after such a long break?
Not weird, but I felt, yeah, you hadn't been doing this for a couple of months, you know. My legs started hurting, my neck started hurting. Oh, that was the most difficult thing. And if you do a show 90 plus minutes, yeah, you get used to it again. You have to get used to it again.
Hopefully.
I mean, after the third show, everything was all right. But as I said, all the other shows had been canceled a couple of months ago. So there was no chance to go on.
Hey guys, Rockish George here, breaking in for the Rockish George podcast, Whiskey Break. This week I have another great bourbon by Basil Hayden. If you've listened to previous podcasts, you'd know I've covered Basil Hayden before. This particular offering is Basil Hayden Toast. It's a permanent addition to their lineup. I've tried everything that Basil Hayden has put out over the years except the 10-year rye, and everything has been fantastic. They make a great product for a Kentucky straight bourbon. Their whiskeys tend to be affordable, even their 10 years or higher aged, more time-given products aren't that expensive. You're not getting into the $100 range with Basil Hayden. Toast comes in at about $40, at least locally. Something a little different with Basil Hayden Toast, not just the toasted barrel versus the charred barrel. It's an all new mash bill using brown rice instead of the traditional malted rye, wheat, or barley grain. They use the brown rice for the bourbon, and the barrels are, like I said, toasted instead of charred. Probably going to give it a lighter flavor. They describe the aroma as toasted oak, complemented by dried fruit and caramelized sugar. The taste, toasted wood and vanilla, and the finish, sweet caramel. The color is dark amber. It's 80 proof, so it's pretty much your standard proof. So I'm going to give it a go here. It does smell very sweet, and I can smell that toasted oak. Like I've said before, I like to keep my analysis simple because nobody really wants a huge soliloquy and all these super descriptions that are just going to confuse them. So here we go. Let's give it a try. Very light on the tongue. I'm definitely getting the toasted wood and vanilla that they said that I would. And like I said, it's light on the tongue. There's certainly the sweet caramel finish. I have to agree with that. I mean, mainly your best bourbons are gonna have sweet caramel and vanilla taste to it. This is really good. Highly recommended. I gotta have another sip. I drink my bourbon straight up. This is a good straight up drink. I wouldn't mix it with a damn thing. So once again, Basil Hayden Toast, $40, at least locally here in Massachusetts. It might be cheaper or a little more expensive where you're at. Definitely worth picking up and grabbing and sharing with a buddy or two. Now let's get back to Victory guitarist Herman Frank. If I were to go to a Victory show, am I going to get Victory music, Herman Frank music, and Accept music, or just Victory music?
Just Victory music. I'm doing this really straight. If I go out with Herman Frank, I do Herman Frank songs. If I go out with Victory, I'm gonna do just Victory songs. I mean, we had so much albums and CD released. I mean, we could even do 5 hours. So there's no need for doing some Accept songs or Herman Frank songs in between. Okay. A couple of cover bands or 2 other bands. Nah.
Victory's not a cover act, is what you're saying.
No, yeah.
You got another project in the works coming out. I actually talked to David Reece about Iron Allies. Speaking of Accept.
Why did I expect this question?
I think there's a lot of interest in this. I think a lot of people want to see Herman Frank with David Reece. And David says you got some songs out there. Where are you in the process?
Yeah. Oh, we're still writing. Now we are, what is it, offering the songs to record companies. We got the first offers. And now we're gonna have to decide, which company we want to go for, you know. David wants to go with this one. I want to go with this one. So we're not sure right now. We wait for 2 offers. They're still not. They hadn't still come in. So, and we're missing maybe 2 or 3 songs more good. I would love to write a couple of more songs to have the chance to sort out the good ones. No, actually, they all had been good. But to come out with the most best you can come out, you know, you can get there. But actually, it's a wonderful. I'm very excited about this project. It's the next Accept singer I'm working with.
Yeah. Wait, what?
I
what?
performed with Udo. I performed with Mark Tonilla, and I'm maybe gonna perform with David Reece. Wow, haven't thought about that.
Yeah, exactly. You're definitely working with all. I bet you never saw that coming ever.
No, but a couple of days of yesterday, somebody in India you mentioned. Oh, so you are the only one who will perform with all the 3 Accept singers. I said, oh yeah.
I would ask you this. You said previously that the last Victory album was the Don't Talk Science was the last Victory album, and you left Accept. Is there any chance that the door is open for you to return to Accept in the future if there was an opportunity, or at least write music?
As James Bond said, never say never. It's kind of like a small world, and it's kind of like a crazy world, you know. You never know what's gonna happen. I mean, just think about if they would do. Halloween did this nice reunion with 2 singers and I guess hundreds of guitar players or whatever.
It was a lot.
3 bass players, 5 drummers. Anyway, I mean, it would be a great thing. I mean, once in a while, a couple of people start thinking about this, doing a reunion with Udo and Mark Tonilla and a couple of guitar players and maybe 2 bass players or whatever. That might be a big thing. You know? You never say never. Actually, right now I'm concentrating on my own thing, and I guess Wolf Hoffman is concentrating on his Accept.
We'll leave it at never say never.
Yeah, I guess so. That might be the best word.
Absolutely. Are you working on anything else besides your solo material, Victory, and this Iron Allies project?
Not yet. No, nothing right now. Nothing specific. Once in a nah. I mean, that's enough.
Yeah, because as soon as you tour with one, you got to go out with the other and just keep alternating, just to keep
Yeah,
the live dates flowing, right?
maybe I was doing in between. My wife, she's a very good singer songwriter, so I produced her album, and so I'm quite busy these days.
What is your wife's name or album that she has?
A couple of years ago, I did. She made an kind of like metal rock album. Poison Sun was a band called.
Okay, well, I'll have to check that out. Poison Sun, are
Yeah,
they
yeah,
still
you
active?
might. Oh, you will find it in somewhere in the net. And this thing, we just finished the recordings a couple of months ago. So we are right now we are shopping for any company. Maybe there's a company who will release it. If not, we're gonna release it by ourselves. And so there's no title right now. I guess you would call it Rough Diamond. It's just her voice and just a guitar
That's it? Well, is it
or
acoustic?
guitar. I mean, a couple of tracks she did with guitars, but it's really in the acoustic way and really simple is not the right word. It's not overproduced. Let's put it this way.
It's been 35 years since you joined Victory for the Don't
Yeah.
Get Mad, Get Even album. I actually talked to Charlie Hune recently. I wanted to ask you what you remember about kind of putting that album together and heading out on tour with it.
I mean, Don't Get Mad was just it was a start, and I really liked the songs. I'm once in a while listening back to these albums or the older albums, and especially these days because we had to play a couple of classics in the concerts. So that was quite exciting time in the past.
Did you try to, for this current version of Victory, before you settled on your current singer, did you try reaching out to Charlie Hune or one of your other singers from the past,
I mean,
besides the one that couldn't?
Fernando Garcia is not available anymore. I guess.
Oh,
Nah. Ah, not
it,
not in every chest is the heart of rock and roll is beating the same as like in mine.
right. And Charlie's
So
busy with Foghat.
and Charlie, he's happy with Foghat. I mean, he's a really his style or his heart is beating. I guess now for the rhythm and blues thing more.
Absolutely. It's probably tough for him to get overseas all the time, too.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. These days, wouldn't be. It's quite impossible. So and actually, I never thought about it. We wrote back and forward on Facebook a couple of times about this idea, but then I said to myself, if I would find somebody here from Europe and Johnny is from Switzerland, I mean, so that might be the best solution. And actually, it is. I mean, Johnny is such a young guy. He's in the best age in the beginning of 40s. He's really good looking, and he's totally.
It's those young guys that keep you young, right? You got to keep up with them on the side, right?
Yeah, that's the right word for it. You just say it. And I mean, right now I'm really happy that I have a couple of younger guys around me, because they pushing me forward.
Exactly. Udo actually told me the same thing. He's like his
Yeah.
band's younger and they keep the old man going.
As I said, I mean, the heart of the rock and roll heart is not beating the same in every chest. If I would think about, I talked to Peter Knorr, the original bass player, and he's more into writing books these days. He said, "Oh, I don't want to play 90 minutes on stage. Oh, I'm getting too old, blah, blah, blah." Yeah. So sit down in your wheelchair.
That's the spirit.
Yeah, I mean, hey, you can't blame anybody. I mean, as soon as you're getting over 60, you can't be, not everybody can be the rock and roller
Absolutely.
anymore. I mean, you can't blame them.
The new Victory album is Gods of Tomorrow, comes out November 26th on AFM Records. I listened to it. You got a great classic rock inspired album here. You got a little hard rock in there too, and it sounds really good.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I couldn't add anything.
And I wish you the best with its release and with the rest of your tour dates, that they don't get canceled. That's all I got for you today, Herman.
Thank you so much. So thank you for taking your time.
Once again, I want to thank Herman Frank for appearing on the Rock is George podcast. Be sure to check out his new album with Victory, out on AFM Records. It's called Gods of Tomorrow. You can also check out Herman Frank's solo album, Two for a Lie, out on the same label. Speaking of which, I want to thank Dustin Hardman of AFM Records of making this interview possible. When you're done checking out what Herman Frank has done recently, be sure to go back and check out his back catalog, his early records with Victory, Balls to the Wall with Accept, the newer albums with Accept that he appeared on with Mark Torillo on vocals. Herman Frank's upcoming project, Iron Allies, is with David Reece, who appeared on an Accept album. I interviewed David Reece recently at Metal Express Radio. You can go to metalexpressradio.com to check that out. I also interviewed original Accept singer Udo Dirkschneider. You can check that out at metalexpressradio.com. If you want to listen to an interview with the original singer of Victory, Charlie Hune, also at Metal Express Radio. I want to thank you all for listening. I am so excited that we made it to episode 20. I've got lots of great content coming up for you, including Carmine Appice of Vanilla Fudge, Blue Murder, King Cobra, Rod Stewart. I have an interview coming up with Steve Overland of FM, Groundbreaker, Lone Rider, a bunch of other projects. I've got the drummer from the Yardbirds, Jim McCarty. He's written a book. I think this interview is going to be a little different than the normal music interviews. I'm working on getting more pop culture stuff, more nostalgia stuff, and more whiskey stuff for future podcasts. And something a little exciting for me is that we're going to be expanding a bit beyond the podcast, but still a little early for that. So stay tuned to anchor.fm/rockisgeorge and also our YouTube page. You've been great. I've been George Dion. I'll see you again soon.